Getting to the heart of the matter. Back to Guy, Ben, and Frank with more Inside the News.
Welcome back to Inside the News. This is typically our election trail segment, and we're going to be talking about that. I want to thank all of our affiliates across the United States for carrying us. And you can also find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, and AUN TV. And we want to thank them for bringing us on board their network. Okay, Frank Vernuccio's on your top left, Ben Brunson's on the bottom middle. And the three words, when they talk about real estate, location, 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 you talk about this next election, Frank, it's going to be crime, crime, and crime.
Increasingly, that is becoming the number one issue, and it's amazing how Democrats are simply misreading the mood of the public at this point. Major cities and even portions of major cities that were considered the safest are now subjected to horrendous crime, and part of it is the attitude towards the police. When an officer puts on that uniform in the morning, goes out on patrol, he doesn't know whether he's going to end the day indicted, dead, or fired. We see particularly in the case of Atlanta, which continues to, I think, boggle the mind of anyone who's ever been in law enforcement and anyone who simply wants law and order. You had a police officer who stopped a released convicted felon. He was in jail for beating up children. He stopped on a second DUI. In the course of the arrest, the perp pulls the cop's laser and attempts to shoot him with it. The police officer responds in the only appropriate way possible. He shoots at the perpetrator. The story ends with the cop being indicted for murder. There's no logic to it. There's no legal justification for it. It's a political statement of the hard left. It is a move by the left to establish a type of disorder in the country, to abolish any legitimate symbol of law and order. This is not uncommon in countries that are going towards a socialist regime. You delegitimize legitimate authority, and then a socialist strong man or woman comes along and says, hey, I'm the only one who can reestablish order. Vote for me. This is all part of a political piece. It's disgraceful.
Boy, when he started mentioning that, Ben, all I was thinking about was the mafia back in the 20s and the 30s. It kind of sounds familiar. We will protect your business, even though they were the ones who firebombed them the week before.
Well, yes, extortion, ask the people in CHOP, and I think they would tell you that extortion is alive and well. Look, there is what a lot of this narrative is missing on both the right and left is that defunding the police or the action of lowering budgets, police budgets, is not how you effectively end policing. It's persecuting the police. It's when police realize that they are the subject of political persecution by the governments, the mayors and the city governments that are supposed to have their back. That is what ends policing. And the reality in most of a lot of cities in this country, cities like Portland, Seattle, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, New York now, the reality is right now that if you're a police officer, you're going to sit on your hands in all but the most egregious case, because if you do something politically inconvenient, politically wrong, you arrest the wrong person in the wrong way, or you shoot the wrong person, as in the case of Rayshard Brooks. And let's be honest, if Rayshard Brooks were white and that same exact scenario played out, you'd never have heard about it. But Rayshard Brooks was black. And an unfortunate scenario played out. And so now there's a political persecution of these officers who did nothing but do their job correctly and completely justified shooting. And that reality has ended policing right now in the country. And crime is reacting quite quickly. The numbers are staggering how fast crime is rising across all these cities right now.
Okay, Frank, I was going to bring up Chaz and Chop and really dovetailing with what Ben was just saying there, in the fact that Chaz and Chop out there in Seattle and Washington State, you got the governor, he's letting it happen. You got the mayor of Seattle, that's letting it happen. finally we see the police chief of Seattle stepping up and saying, enough is enough. We got to straighten some things out. It's kind of nice, and that's a breath of fresh air, isn't it, Frank?
One of the things I think you start to notice across the country is the different emphasis on how the left and the right sees their duty once they get into office. I think in most cases, Republican or centrist or right-wing governments tend to see their job as, well, doing their job, collecting the garbage, putting out the fires, keeping the people safe. In left-wing administrations, both in the State House and in city halls, they see their job as furthering an ideological agenda. And if you look in where we're seeing CHOP or Chaz, whatever you want to call it lately, not intervening in that, not protecting the people in that district, clearly means that they are pursuing an ideological agenda. I see the same thing here in New York. When you listen to the mayor speak, Comrade Mayor de Blasio, he talks about furthering ideological agendas, not about collecting the garbage or putting out the fires or keeping the streets safe. That's the real problem. The split in the country right now is not necessarily between right and left, or certainly not really between black and white. It's between those pushing a hard left ideological socialist agenda down the throats of the people and the rest of us who simply want government to do its job.
You know something, Ben, you've been to New York several times. You like the city, and Frank lives up in that area. And it is a pretty city, but under de Blasio, who's absolutely clueless and out to lunch, going to be cutting $1 billion out of the police force, it is almost mind-boggling, isn't it, Ben?
Well, it's their decision to make. I lived in New York and worked in New York for almost a decade, so I understand. And that was the decade that led up to Giuliani's election, and you're going to see the same pattern once again. So the unthinkable, a Republican winning the mayor role in Chicago or in New York is probably going to happen again. CHOP on one level is a godsend to the Republican Party because it has shown everyone how truly despicable this anarchic vision of America is when put into practice. Murders and rapes and crime and brutality among the armed guards of CHOP. If you read Lord of the Flies, I read it in high school. That's a long time ago now, but I still remember Lord of the Flies enough to see that book playing out right now in CHOP, where brutality reigns within a matter of days when you take organized and professional law enforcement off the streets. And Americans are seeing that lesson, and it's going to be remembered come November, in my opinion.
All right, Ben, Frank, I saw you shaking your head there. You get a final 30-second comment.
Yeah, Lord of the Flies exactly is what it is. But you're also seeing in a number of cities and a number of towns throughout the United States, the number of people buying guns has skyrocketed. The confidence that government can keep people safe is being reduced to a minimal level. And even in cities where gun ownership is prohibited or discouraged greatly by local statute, people are finding ways to defend themselves. They're doing what they have to do to keep themselves, their homes, and their families safe.
Glad that you are with us and watching us on AUN TV Network. You can find them at aun-tv.com. We'll be back.
You're listening to Wehman, Brunson, and Vernuccio, Inside the News.